Zaxby's Sensation Salad is so much more than a plain old salad. It's a salad, which begs the question, at what point does a salad stop being a salad and become a salad? Is it when you add Zaxby's fried chicken to it? Crunchy wontons? Asian slaw? Citrus vinaigrette? Teriyaki glaze? Sweet and spicy sauce? Or is it when you top it all with a handmade perfectly fried egg roll? Without a doubt, the egg roll. The Sensation Salad, only at Zaxby's.
Welcome to the Season of Self-Love podcast. I am your host, Nyomi Banks, and I am thrilled to have you join me on this transformative journey. You see, every day we dive into a powerful conversation about self-discovery, healing, and empowerment. This podcast is brought to you by Ask Nyomi and Elevate Me Self-Discovery, where we believe that loving yourself is the first step to living a fulfilling life. You can expect insightful discussions, practical tips, and inspiring stories. Plus, we'll occasionally welcome special guests who will share their unique perspectives on self-love and personal growth. So get comfy, grab your favorite beverage, and let's embark on this journey together. Because it's time to embrace the beautiful person that you are. So let's elevate our lives one episode at a time. Now let's get started. All right, my beautiful people. Well, welcome to the Season of Self-Love, where you get your daily dose of inspiration. I am your host, Nyomi Banks, and it's a privilege to have you here with us on this Wisdom Wednesday, where we dive into transformative conversations with guest experts to elevate our journey of self-love. Well, this month is all about embracing new beginnings as part of the Year of Rebirth. In each episode, we're exploring powerful strategies and stories that inspire growth, resilience, and transformation. Well, today I'm so thrilled to introduce our guest for today, and that's Brian Hite. Brian is a performance psychologist, a former stuntman, and a resilience trainer who has spent his career helping individuals navigate high-stakes environments and confidence and clarity. From creating impactful programs like Pressure X and Phase X to inspiring people worldwide to embrace their inner strength. Brian brings a wealth of knowledge and personal experience to today's conversation. But before we get into this conversation with Brian, we're going to take a quick break, all right? It's your girl, goddess, Nyomi Banks, here on the Season of Self-Love podcast, and we'll be right back.
Washington Wellness Institute focuses on healing always. For me, if I look good, then I feel good. If I feel good, then I share the good. If I share the good, then I celebrate the good. If I celebrate the good, then I live the good, so I can be paid to be my greatest. But I have to learn the good to be the good.
So, what does it take to be the greatest? It's as simple as a free 15-minute consultation. Be kind to yourself and heal always.
Hey, it's your girl, goddess, Nyomi Banks, and make sure you tune in every Thursday night to Ask Nyomi Bridging the Gap podcast, where we talk about everything from love, sex, relationship, cultural differences, and so much more. We're bridging the gap between them all, and we even talk about spiritual uplifting. You need to stop by. Me and Dr. Mike, as well as the BTG crew. We have some amazing guests that come through. You never know. Just make sure you tune in Thursday night, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Go to axnyomi.com and tell them Nyomi teach you. All right, well, welcome back. So we have Mr. Brian Hite that is here with us. Hi.
How you doing?
I am so well. Again, welcome to the Season of Self-Love. I cannot wait to have this conversation with you.
God, I'm looking forward to it. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. But before we get into it, we're going to take a quick little, how we do it, Season of Self-Love, you know how we do it, guys. We're going to first take a moment just to center ourselves with a grounding meditation, all right? So here we go. Take a deep breath in and exhale slowly. Feel your body relax with each breath. Now, as you inhale, imagine drawing in clarity and strength. And as you exhale, release any tension or doubt. Now picture yourself standing at a start of a new chapter. The possibilities of endless, and you have everything within you to navigate this journey with resilience and grace. Now take one deep breath in and out. And when you are ready, gently open your eyes and let's dive into today's conversation. All right, my beautiful people. If you are new here to the Season of Self-Love podcast, it's something that we do every day, Monday through Friday. It's just to help ground us before we get into the topic at hand. Well, again, welcome, Brian.
No, thanks for having me.
All right, so let's get started. Let's talk about your foundation. What exactly is performance psychology, and why is it so critical for high-stakes environments?
Well, it's interesting. It's a field that probably came into its own, I guess, in the mid-'80s-ish in the sport world, primarily, and I guess almost exclusively back then. But it's broadened out now to other fields, into the performing arts, singing, dancing, musicians, etc., and even into the corporate world, where really the focus of performance psychology is just about how do we get ourselves into a place where we are consistently able to bring the best of who we are and what we're capable of into every situation. How do we do that? And it's not just mental, although, the psychology part of it is big, what's going on between our ears, but it's everything else as well. And I really emphasize that in the work that I do: the physical, the mental, the emotional, the social, and even the spiritual aspects of who we are as human beings all interact in ways that are inseparable from each other, and they contribute to our ability to be at our best. So that's really what performance psychology is in a nutshell.
I love that. That's powerful. We just finished reading last year, and I'm going to keep saying this because I love this book, Change Your Paradigm, Change Your Life by Bob Proctor. And it had came in at a very pivotal time in my life, but as well, this is something that we've been talking about here on the podcast as using quite a few things that he talked about. And one thing he talked about is desire, about having a desire to want to do better and being more connected to what you're doing in a more emotional state. So I love that you had said that in your piece. But now I want to ask you, many of our listeners are embarking on a personal transformation this year. We got the rebirth. Last year was, we're dominating the year of 2024. So how can they begin reframing their mindset around stress and pressure?
Oh, well, that, all those specifics around that, there's a lot of individuality to it. But I guess probably if we're going to talk about stress and pressure, before we get into reframing it, let's just even define what they are, because they're not the same things. And a lot of times people conflate them. They will treat them like they are the same, but they're not. They're different, and it's important to understand how. So stress, this comes from, if there are any research theoretical geeks out there like I am, this is the transactional model of stress by Lazarus and Folkman that you can find in the literature, goes back a long way. But they conceptualize stress as being comprised of two things. One is we perceive a situation as a threat. So that's the first thing. If we're in a situation and we think something bad might happen to us, well, then that's a threat that we perceive. But the second part is equally important, and that is we perceive that we don't have the necessary resources to handle that situation effectively, meaning that we perceive a threat and we don't think we can do anything about it. We don't think we can manage it. That's where stress gets created. So when we think about stress, it really is about the situation and our perception of the situation itself. Now, pressure is a little bit different. Pressure, when we experience pressure, our attention is on the consequences. So not even just the outcome of a situation, it's the consequences associated with those outcomes. That's what we're focused on. So if I screw this up, then this bad thing will happen. That's where pressure comes from. And honestly, pressure can even come from if this thing goes great and I kill it and I do really wonderfully, then all this great stuff will happen. That can also still create pressure. Pressure comes from our attention being on the consequences. And when those consequences really matter, when the stakes truly are high, And that's where our attention is. Pressure tends to be maximized. So whereas stress is about the situation itself and how we perceive it and how, our ability to handle it, pressure is more about, well, if it goes badly, then, or if it goes well, then. It's about the after the situation. That's what creates pressure. So they work together in a lot of ways. They can feed each other, but they're not the same.
I love that you said, love that you said, I'm over here writing my notes. If you saw me write my notes, because just to even break down pressure like that versus pressure and stress, a lot of times we do go into stress and anxiety and truly don't understand the breakup of it. But you breaking it down like that is more of what we perceive it to be. So it's like we going into the future before, instead of being in the presence, whatever it is that we are doing. And then when you talk about pressure, it's like something is already done and you already, again, not in the present moment, but still going further to where now you're being a fortune teller to say, well, if this don't happen, then I'm gonna, well, if it do, then I'm gonna. So it's like you're going way ahead, above your emotions before you deal with what's happening right here, right now.
Yeah, and that's the key point. It really is. I mean, if we're talking about alleviating stress, one great place to start is stop perceiving the situation as a threat. That's a great place to start, because a lot of times, if we really think about it, I mean, even just thinking back on my life, I've been divorced twice. Each time it was really, really hard. And if you were to ask me right after that divorce, hey, Brian, how do you feel about this? Is this a good thing or bad thing? I'd say it's a devastating thing. It's a horrible thing. And I would treat that situation as a threat, that it was a bad thing that was happening. Bad things were coming as a result of it. Well, now, 7 years after the last one, if you were to ask me, hey, Brian, how was that divorce? Best thing that ever happened to me. Set me up for success in so many ways that I didn't anticipate at all in the moment. So if we can recognize that a lot of times we're just flat out wrong about our perception of the situation, it reminds me of a there's a story. It's attributed to some ancient Chinese proverbs or whatever it is, but there's an old Chinese guy, and he loses his horse. His horse runs away, and his neighbor comes over. He's like, "Oh, your horse ran away. That really sucks." And he's like, "Yeah, I don't know, maybe." And then so his son goes out to go find the horse, comes back with 6 additional horses. Neighbor's like, "What? You got 6 additional horses? That's awesome." I don't know, maybe. Well, then the son gets on the horses to try to break them and tame them. Son gets thrown off, breaks his leg. Neighbor comes over. "Oh, man, your son broke his leg. That sucks." Well, I don't know, maybe. Next thing you know, the government's coming by to conscript people for the army because there's a war happening. But they skip him because the guy's son he's broken. He's hurt. It's like, "Oh, man, your son got skipped over. That's great." I don't know, maybe. So the whole point is that no matter what the situation is that we're encountering, trying to define it as good or bad, you got to at least take that with a grain of salt, because you never know what the future is going to bring. So if we're feeling stress and it's because we recognize that the situation, we're perceiving it as a threat, maybe we can turn it around in a couple of ways. One is maybe it can be looked at as an opportunity. So is it hard? Yes. Are potential bad consequences if it goes wrong there? Sure. But is it possible to learn and grow anyway? Is it possible to get better for having gone through this, regardless of the outcome, even having the experience? Is there a way to cultivate wisdom in this environment where I walk away better no matter what? Can I look at as a challenge, something that allows me to use skills that I've developed or practice skills that maybe I haven't developed as much? Is there a way to look at it in that way, to transform it into an opportunity?
I love it.
That's a huge way to reduce stress right off the bat, immediately.
Yeah, I love that. That is something that, and I'm glad that you stressed it today, is because that is a part of self-love. That is a part of growing and transforming, is understand everything that we came into our lives, whether it's good or bad. I say it's a gift. I say it's a gift and it's a lesson altogether, because you can use it as a lesson for you, but then it can be teachable moments for others. As we use our story, as you just spoke about your 2 divorces, one was different than the other. And that because you went through the one and you understood how to be able to understand what you were going through it during that time. It also prepared you for that second time, but then it prepared you for now to be able to speak on your 2 different experiences for anyone that's going through it now. For me, just having this whole new platform here. It's been a year since I had this season of Stuff Love, and it's totally different from my last platform. But that last platform and that last career that I had, it set me up and prepared me for the very thing that I am doing right now. And I love it, whether I had a bad situation or a good situation. As you said, I learned from it. I got a gift out of it. And it giving me the opportunity to sit on stages like this with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, instead of looking at things as good or bad, maybe just pleasant or unpleasant is the way. Like, I don't want to go through another divorce. I didn't want to go through the one. It was an unpleasant experience. I would rather not go through that again. However, if it were to come up, I know that I'm going to be better through it. I know that I'm capable of growing. I know that the skills that I developed during the coping process are skills that I use to this day for any number of things that come up in my life. So I think that looking at things as pleasant, unpleasant, I would like more of that. I would like not quite as much of that, is probably a better way to think about it than good or bad, labeling it that way. Because if we label it as bad, I mean, that almost by definition means that we're not benefiting in any way from this thing. And I think that we always can. So that's one thing, in terms of reducing stress that I think is important. The other is this idea of resources, is the belief that we don't have the resources necessary to handle the situation effectively. Now, we might be right. I mean, quite frankly, there are some situations where we just may not be equipped with what's necessary to deal with that thing and very well. So we might be completely accurate in our assessment of that. However, often we're wrong. And we're wrong because we don't give ourselves credit in the way that we can. In other words, we have resources that maybe we don't even recognize as resources. These come in the form of things that maybe your friends tell you or family tell you, like, you're really good at, or, you know what, I love the way you, and you think to yourself, what are you even talking about? That's not even something that I process. It's not even something that we're aware of, but these other people are seeing it in us, but we don't know. So sometimes we can just be completely oblivious to some of the resources that we do have available. Other times we get fixated on certain things, on maybe physical resources or social resources. We don't take advantage of some of the mental resources or emotional resources that we also have available, or using them together as efficiently and effectively as we might be able to. So the other way to get rid of that stress is, even if we're perceiving it as a threat, got it, but let's do a real thorough and accurate analysis of what are our resources that we have, and are we really bringing them fully into this moment?
I like that you said it. First of all, let me say this. Thank you for the pleasant and unpleasant. Thank you for that. And I'm going to apply that into my everyday life. Like, truly, when you're so used to using certain words, putting them together, and really don't think about it. But when you really sit and think like, wow, that is right. Especially when we're talking about new beginnings, when we're talking about changing our paradigms, we have to find different ways to be able to explain other words in our lives that make it make it better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Words are important. Words are meaningful, and because they represent concepts, and those concepts are the things that we filter. Those concepts are things that we filter our entire lives through. We walk through our lives, we see things, we experience stuff, but that stuff gets filtered through how, those concepts, those beliefs, those values that we hold. And those are all tied to words. So words are incredibly important to pay attention to. What words are we using? How often are we using them? What do they mean when we do use them? With whom are we using them? These are all things that are important to consider. You're right.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. Thank you for that. All right, so new beginnings, it can be very daunting to some people, but Brian, what does the concept mean to you, especially given your career as a stuntman and resilience trainer?
Yeah, new beginnings. That's funny because I'm still a stuntman to this day. I've been a full-time stuntman at 3 separate times in my life, but I've never stopped doing stunts at any point. So I started being a full-time stuntman at 20 and then left around, 30-ish or so to go work for the Army for a couple years, did that, went back to stunts full-time, then went back to the Army again for another 9 years or so, and then went back to stunts again full-time when I opened my business Begin Again Performance Psychology, which is now transferred to Brian Hite Global. So I've had a lot of new beginnings, and again, 2 divorces. So I was single and I was married, and I was single and I was married, and I was single, and now I'm engaged again, getting ready to have a whole new beginning. I have a daughter. So I didn't have a daughter, then I did have a daughter. New beginnings happen all the time. These are things that it doesn't just happen every January 1. It doesn't just happen when big things happen in our lives. Honestly, my book, Begin Again, Utilize the Wisdom of Eastern and Western Ideologies to Achieve Your Full Potential. The reason that my business was called Begin Again and why I named the book Begin Again is because that is such a critical thing to be able to do, and not just every year or even every month or week, every day, every minute. Right now, we have the opportunity to begin again. Why? Because as you mentioned earlier, the present moment is where everything happens. Yes. What's in the past is in the past. It's done. Now, I would argue, and I have in an essay that I wrote, that we can change our past in the sense that we can change which things we choose to prioritize from our past and how we interpret those things. In other words, how we perceive them, how we explain them. Like I said with the divorce, if you were to ask me right after the divorce was still in the past, but it was a bad thing to me. Yeah. If you ask me now about the divorce, I would say it's a good thing to me. So I can change my past by changing my perspective. But the objective things that occurred, there's nothing I can do about that. That all happens right now. And I have the ability every second of every day to begin again. If I don't like my mood, I can change it next minute. If I don't like the way I'm interacting with somebody or the tone of voice that I'm using, I can change that. I can begin again at any moment. As soon as I recognize that I'm heading in a direction that I don't really want to go, I can begin again. So this idea of beginning again, it doesn't necessarily, I don't think it should be tied to just big things. This is a concept that if we can keep it top of mind and we can truly recognize, and it is just a recognition of the fact that we are always beginning again. We are never tied to, connected to, handcuffed by the past. We aren't. We can begin again anew every second.
Thank you. That's inspiring. That truly is. Can you share a specific story or transformative moment that shaped your perspective on resilience and starting over?
Well, I'd say that I'll tell you too. When I first got into stunts, I was floundering. I was floundering in college. I was going to Rutgers. I had gone through 2 years of college with no idea, no clue what I was going to be when I grew up. Every job that I thought of, I was like, well, can I do this? Can I wake up and do this job? I was thinking, nope, can't do that one. There's nothing that I came across that made me happy. And that started to become worrisome halfway through, the university career. Well, at the very beginning of my junior year, that's when I went to see the Batman stunt show at the Six Flags in New Jersey. And I was going to college at Rutgers. So it was right down the street from where I was going to school. And I knew the company manager of the show. He had gotten a friend of mine some tickets, and we went to see the show together. And there was right at the beginning of the show, this explosion happened. Motorcycles came jumping out of this thing, and I was transfixed. I was mesmerized. I can't even describe the feeling. I was completely captivated for the next 20 minutes with this show and everything going on in it. And when it was over, it was like this, like this weight came off of me, like this energy infused me. And I was able to go backstage because I knew the guy, and I was able to talk to the people and ask them, how do you get this job? I couldn't even believe it was a job, but I was asking them, like, how do you get this job? And they said, well, you got to know how to do fights, high falls, and motorcycles. And then you go to the audition, you see what happens. Well, I talked one of the guys into teaching me fights and high falls. I went and bought a dirt bike and learned the dirt bike stuff, went to the audition, got the job, and did it that next summer. But the transformative moment was while I watched that show for the very first time. That was it. That's when I moved from, I'm lost, I have no idea where I fit, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, to that right there. That's the thing. That's what I want to do. And so that's what I did. I went, I did the show that summer. I moved to LA. I started working in film and TV, and that's what happened. And I would say the next really big, I mean, there were many throughout. I would say that that transformation from after that second divorce, that one was a really tough one. I really started to take concrete steps to overcome that. There came a time, and I don't remember an exact moment of, okay, Brian, you got to be done with the depression and all the nonsense and move forward. I don't remember a moment like that. I don't even know that there was one, but I knew that it needed to happen. And little by little, it started to happen when I started putting the right practices into place, meaning I started to get up in the morning and I would exercise at least a little bit. I would stretch a little bit, or I'd do some exercise, something. And then I would sit and read for a little bit from different books, wisdom books, Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, works by Seneca, the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, the Hindu Upanishads, just wisdom books that could provide me with wisdom and could feed my spiritual, I'm part of something larger self. And then I would write. I wrote in a journal. I wrote little sticky notes. That's where the book Begin Again came from. It's just a series of essays that I wrote during that period of time in my life when I was reading these books. Something spoke to me and I wrote about it. And over time, that transformation happened. So it's interesting, in the first case, it was a lightning bolt moment that I moved from this to that. But that second time, it occurred over a much longer period of time through more consistent behavioral change. And I think that's probably more the norm than the lightning bolt moments. Just recognizing that if we're going to shift, if we're going to move in a new direction, inertia is a real thing. In other words, inertia is that idea that an object in motion will stay in motion, or an object at rest will stay at rest unless acted on by an outside force. Well, we got to come up with our own outside force. We're heading in a direction, and we got to figure out, okay, well, what outside force is going to shift my direction? It's going to move my trajectory more in the direction I want to go. For me, it was the journaling and the meditation and the exercising and the writing. And those were the things that moved me. Inertia is very real, and we have to come up with those things for ourselves, and it does take time.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And why I say truly thank you for sharing that is because we do that a lot here. We talk about journaling. We talk about the tools and using them and applying them into their daily lives. And I remember a particular Zoom call that we had, and one of the clients said, I know we do a lot of, but is this really going to work? And it does, really, if you go on with intentions that this is how you want your life to be and how you want to go, it's going to work. You have to be patient with the process, because remember, every day is different. Like, I love when you say every day is a new beginning, but not only that, every moment is a new beginning. So listeners, I hope that you all are truly listening to this episode right here, and you are listening to Brian. When getting the shows ready, I've already had shows prepared months in ahead. And I was trying to figure out where to put you at. I didn't know if I wanted to put you in January, or could I do you for March, what is to let go of limitless behavior. I didn't know which one, because I thought that you will be very powerful in both of them. But I knew coming in this new, I said, no, we need to have him in this first one right here for new beginnings, because sometimes we need to understand what new beginnings is, and also put that light up under us to keep us moving, to truly keep us moving.
Yeah. And it does, it's sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's hard. Some mornings you get up and you feel like you want to do it, and other mornings you don't. And this is where, if you can create habits of just, this is what I do, and make it as easy as possible. So if exercise is what you want to do in the morning, get the clothes all set and ready, get them all prepared, get your water bottle filled up, get the workout room at the temperature you want, whatever it is that you're doing, make it easy to do what it is that you need to do. And then, again, some mornings are easier than others, but they're, the science behind all of this is pretty cool, because what we're talking about, yes, it takes time. Yes, it takes habit. Yes, it takes practice. It takes repetition. Here's why. Because the brain is plastic. It's malleable. The brain rewires itself. There's a thing called neuroplasticity, and the brain rewires itself to make the connections that it makes most often more efficient. So the things that we do most often, those are all the result of brain connections, brain cells, pathways activating. Well, the more often we do them, the more often those pathways activate. And the more often those pathways activate, the stronger those connections among the neurons become. And the stronger those connections among the neurons become, the more easily and automatically these things happen. Now, we think about that in terms of behavior a lot. In fact, in sport, they call it muscle memory, where you just do a movement so often it just becomes automatic. But it's a misnomer. It's not really muscle memory. It's brain memory. It's your brain rewiring itself. But here's the thing to remember, and this is where a lot of people, they haven't really thought about it in this way. The thoughts that we have, the ways that we perceive our environment, the meaning that we assign to the situations we find ourselves in, the way that we think about and feel about the people around us, the emotions that we experience, all of those things are connections happening in the brain. And so the more we train ourselves to think of a situation as an opportunity versus a threat, as a challenge versus something bad that might happen, if we think in terms of gratitude rather than what's been taken from us, if we think in terms of empathy for others rather than how we ourselves are affected, those switches, that's just a choice of how we're going to perceive our situation, how we're going to interpret it, which things about our environment we're going to prioritize. That's a choice we make, and we make it every day. And if we make the wrong one, which we get all selfish and whatever, sometimes that's how it is, well, we begin again. We change it, we shift it. And the more often we do that, and the more often we engage those brain pathways responsible for opportunity thinking, for optimistic thinking, for empathy and gratitude and engagement with others, the easier it becomes. The more naturally we do that, the less we have to think about it, and the fewer situations we come across where we think to ourselves, oh yeah, I'm screwing this up. That happens less. So, but it all comes down to the brain. We're training our brain with those new attitudes, with those new perspectives. It's not just about behavioral habits. It's about thinking habits, perceiving habits, emotional reaction habits, all of that.
Love that. Thank you. Thank you, truly. So let's talk about this. Can you tell us about your programs, the Pressure X, the Phase X, and Facts, and how do it help people harness their strengths?
Yeah, well, like we talked about, stress and pressure are two different things. Each comes down to perception, what we're paying attention to. We talked about stress. Pressure is about the consequences. But here's the thing is if we can minimize pressure, we can mitigate it. If we start thinking about, okay, well, if these consequences happen, is it really as bad as what I think that it would be? Often we're wrong about that too. We think something's going to be catastrophic, and, it turns out it's really not. It may not be pleasant still, but it's not as bad as what we made it out to be. Or can we think about, okay, if this happens, is it really bad at all, or is it good? This goes back to, again, how am I perceiving it? Is there a way to look at the situation as an opportunity? We can lower perceived pressure that way, but it doesn't eliminate it. And I think eliminating it is important for the reason you brought up at the beginning. And here's what I mean. If we're experiencing pressure, we are still focused on the consequences. We're in the future, meaning we're in the imaginary, not even real space. That's where we're living. And that's not where things happen. Things happen in the present moment. The future absolutely will be the result of what happens right now. Now, our prediction about the future might be pretty accurate. We may have a high probability of being right about what the consequences are and the connections with all the behaviors. But whether it's realized or not, this future that we imagine will be the result of what happens right now in this present moment. So it makes no sense to put our attention on the consequences and all the sense in the world to put our attention in the present if what we really want is setting ourselves up for success, for creating conditions that will maximize the likelihood of us achieving what we want to achieve or experiencing an outcome that we want to experience. And that's where the facts come in that you mentioned. FACT, it's an acronym. It stands for focus, arousal, confidence, and tenacity. Focus just means where's our attention? Well, it needs to be right now. What can I do in this moment that creates conditions for success? Arousal is our pumped upness. That's our energy activation levels. Because for any given situation, right here, this podcast for you and me, each of us has an ideal energy activation level that allows us to be at our best. If it's too low, then we're sluggish. We may be a little slow with our thinking. Our energy, we're just not at our best. If it's too high, maybe our thoughts are bouncing all over the place, or our speech is too fast, or our movements are very manic and distracting. There's an ideal amount of energy activation for anything we're doing. That's arousal. Confidence is huge because, again, the extent to which we're likely to perceive something as a threat will absolutely be the result of, at least to some extent, our confidence. Because confidence, what it means is it's our belief in our ability to do something successfully. That's what confidence is. It's our belief that we are capable of encountering situations and handling them well. That's confidence. So as I mentioned with stress, one part is, do I perceive the situation as a threat? The other is believing that we don't have the resources necessary, that we are not capable of handling the situation effectively. So boosting confidence, by definition, will reduce stress.
Yeah.
And if we're experiencing pressure and our focus is on the consequences, then confidence in our ability to manage the present and to deal with the situation will make the likelihood of those bad outcomes lower in our mind. In other words, we experience a lot of pressure when we think, well, there's a 90% chance of this horrible thing happening. We'll feel a lot of stress and pressure.
Yeah.
But if we think, yeah, I mean, that thing's certainly a possibility, but I'd say it's only about a 15, 20% chance of that happening. Well, then now we experience less pressure because we don't think that consequence is as likely to occur. So confidence is huge. And then the last thing is tenacity, which is just stick-to-itness. It's perseverance. It's what we were talking about earlier. Things don't happen overnight most of the time. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they happen in light bulb moments, but not all the time. And so that tenacity, that ability to stick with stuff and to push through those challenging times, get up in the morning when it's not comfortable, it's freezing cold, you're still tired, whatever it might be, the tenacity to stick with what you know is going to work, what you know is going to be helpful over the long term. That absolutely will reduce stress. It will reduce pressure. It will help you keep your attention in the moment. And in these high stakes environments, high stakes moments, which I'm going to define more clearly in a second because I forgot to, we are going to be able to be at our best. Now, when I say high stakes environments, I don't just mean jumping off a building or getting hit by a car or getting shot at if you're a police officer or running in a burning building if you're a fireman. I don't mean just that. I mean any situation where you believe that the consequences matter. Any situation that to you is important, that's a high stakes situation. So any challenging conversation that you might need to have with a spouse or a loved one, that's a high stakes situation. Anytime you're disciplining a child, that's a high stakes situation. Anytime you have to have, I don't know. I mean, the holidays just happened. I experienced a lot of stress and pressure from people. They have guests over. They got their house a certain way. They got to have the meal done a certain way. All this stuff, the consequences matter to them. That's a high stakes situation. So it's not just about these extreme high stakes situations. Truly, any situation where the consequences matter to you, that is a high stakes situation that might, if you look at it as a threat, and if you don't think you have the right resources, create stress. And it might, if your focus is on, well, if this bad thing happens, then create stress, but it doesn't have to. And using the facts, keeping your focus in the present, focusing on those resources that you actually do have access to and can leverage, focusing on those things that you can control and sticking with that over time, that is how you eliminate stress. It's how you eliminate pressure. And it's how you set yourself up for any kind of success, no matter what environment you're in.
Thank you. I'm over here making notes. I'm like, yes, Brian, thank you. All right, so do this for me. What's one technique that listeners can start using today to maintain clarity and focus during challenging situations?
Well, I can't tell you what the best technique for any one individual is going to be for those situations, because the things that cause problems with clarity and focus vary from person to person and situation to situation. But one thing to really, I really think it's at the basic level. And the answer when you first start doing this is sometimes no, that absolutely can't happen. But as you start thinking about it and practicing it more, it becomes easier. And that's what we've already talked about. Turn the threat into an opportunity. Just ask the question. Start with, is this truly as bad as what I think it is? Just start there. And then if you can take it to the next level of, is there anything good that can come from this? If you're sitting in your car in traffic and you're running late for whatever, is there anything good that can come from that? Well, sure, I'm sitting here by myself in this vehicle. I'm not being attacked by anybody. I'm probably in a climate controlled environment, and I'm able to listen to whatever I want to listen to that maybe I don't have time to listen to that often. I can actually learn and be better because I'm sitting here in traffic. That's a way to look at that. So it really is, it's a habit to get into, but it makes so much difference if we can stop thinking of ourselves as victims and look at ourselves as agents in our environment that can take control of how we, not just the situation and not just the things happening, but how we view those things, how we understand them, how we, the story that we're going to tell to people later. Hey, tell me about your day. Well, tell them the story about all the opportunities that you came across and all the ways that you got better today, instead of all the bad things that happened or, the way that you described them that way. That's a huge change that can make worlds of difference really fast.
Beautiful. I love that. I love that whole analogy that you just put down there. That was beautiful. Family. So we come to the end. Today's conversation, it truly had resonated with me. I hope that it had resonated with you. And I encourage you to explore Brian's work further. You can visit Brian Hite Global, and I'm going to spell Hite for you. That's HITE global.com for more resources, including his transformative programs. And don't forget to download our free Year of the Rebirth workbook. It's packed with tools and exercises to help you to embrace new beginnings and navigate your personal journey with intention. Well, you can't find it on the website. You can also look at our show notes. Again, Brian, thank you. Thank you so much for just sharing your wisdom, your insights today. And your story is a testament. I love from the beginning when you talked about going your junior year and going to see that thing. And it was like, oh, that's it right there. So I can truly imagine what that feeling was like for you. And also your power of resilience and just being intentional in what you're doing. So right now, I want to give you the floor. Is there anything else that you want to share with my audience on how they can get with you? I know I gave the website, but your last words that you want to give to the Season of Self-Love.
Yeah, I would just say this, if stress and pressure are things that you experience and struggle with and that you believe are holding you back, or you just get into situations and feel overwhelmed and don't really know how to get going, and you don't have somebody to walk with you to hold your hand through the process of figuring out how to deal with that, please, go to the website, look at the programs, read a little bit about what I offer. And if it resonates with you, shoot me an email, brian@brianhiteglobal.com, or you can schedule a discovery call on there. It doesn't cost anything. That's free. And I'm happy to talk to you about it because I've been there. I've been in all of those situations I just described. It's not a pleasant thing to be in. And I would love to, I love helping people be at their best no matter where they are and what they're doing. So please reach out if I can help.
Beautiful. Thank you. All right, family, as we continue our series of new beginnings, I want you to remember that every transition, no matter how challenging that it is, it's an opportunity. Just as Brian said, it's an opportunity, but also it's an opportunity to grow. Now, you are stronger than you really realize, and with the right tools and mindset, you can achieve anything. So make sure you subscribe to the Season of Self-Love and share this episode with someone who needs inspiration. And join us next time for another powerful conversation. So until then, keep loving yourself fiercely and step into your power. I'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovering and empowerment here at the Season of Self-Love podcast. Remember, embracing self-love is a continuous journey, and we're so glad to have you with us. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review. And don't forget to join our community on Facebook at Season of Self-Love. Connect with like-minded individuals who are also on their self-love journey. Now, if you have any questions or topics that you'd like for us to explore, we love to hear from you. Email us at seasonofselflove@gmail.com and let your voice be heard. So until next time, take a moment for yourself today and remember, you are worthy of love, joy, and all the beautiful things that life has to offer.